Today's recipe is miso soup. The basic recipe I learned from my dad, but there's some added elements that I take from my grandma's recipe. You're going to start off with cold or room temperature water. I'm using between 2 and 3 cups of water, which will be enough for around 3 to 4 servings. Into that, you're going to add a piece of kombu, which is dried seaweed. This is the first step to making your dashi, which is the base of your soup. So just cover that and let it steep for 1 to 2 hours. Now we'll prepare some other elements. I'm using about 1/3 of an onion here, and I'll just slice it thinly. Next, I'll take some dried mushrooms. These are shiitake mushrooms, and I'm going to rehydrate them with some hot water. And I'll let those soak for about 10 to 15 minutes. Next, I'll thinly slice both the white and green parts of the green onion. And just put that aside for later. Now I'll remove the excess oil off of this ake, which is a deep fried tofu that you can find in the freezer section of most Asian grocery stores. To do this, I'm going to place it in a strainer and pour some boiling water over it. You can see here the shimmery bits of oil in the water. You don't really want that in your finished soup. And then wait a second until it cools and squeeze out the water. Next, I'll drain the water from some soft tofu. I'm using about half the whole block of tofu. And I'll slice that into small cubes. And while I'm at it, I'll slice the age into smaller pieces. And then do the same with the mushrooms. I've heated the kombu water just a little bit, but it's really important never to let it boil. Your soup can get a little slimy if you do, so once it's just barely warm, I remove the kombu, and you can save it for later. And for some extra flavor, add the broth from the soaked mushrooms. Now we're going to bring the kombu water to a gentle simmer. While that's going, I'll show you how to make a simple side dish with the kombu that you just removed. So the kombu is pretty slimy and it's also quite tough, but it does have a really lovely flavor. So what we'll do is slice it as thinly as possible into small strips. Next, I'm going to peel a small knob of ginger and grate this whole knob on top of the kombu. And finally, I just add a dash of soy sauce and mix it all up. And that's it. If you wanted, you could add some rice vinegar or some sesame oil. I like eating this over rice, and it's nice that we don't have to waste it after making the soup. At this point, your water is simmering and it's time to add some bonito flakes to the soup. These are basically shaved flakes of dried fish and will give your soup a really deep, rich flavor. Add a small handful and let it simmer for 1 to 2 minutes. And then strain and pour the liquid back into the pot. We're going to get a few more elements ready for the soup. This is wakame, which is another type of seaweed, except it's a lot softer. All you need to do to soften it is pour a little bit of cold water on top of it. A little goes a really long way, so all you need is, at the most, a tablespoon. It actually gets a lot bigger than it seems, so I like to crunch it up in my palms a little bit just to break it up a little. What my dad does is cut it with scissors after it's softened, so you could do that too. And now we have all of our ingredients ready for our soup. Add your onions first, and then the miso. I'm using this organic red miso. Normally I would use a combination of white miso and red, but I just have red right now. Grab about 2 tablespoons on a wooden spoon and scrape it into a ladle. Then you're going to use the ladle to grab some hot liquid and use the wooden spoon to help you blend it into the soup. This method ensures that the miso is blended through the whole soup. And after I add my first bit of miso, I always taste it to see if it needs a little more. Keep in mind that once you add your tofu and your other ingredients, it's going to water down the soup a little bit, so you want to make it a little bit stronger than you think you need. And then you can just add your other ingredients. I add everything but the green onion because I like to save that for garnish. And at this point, you're done. If you have other things to make, just make sure to keep it on a low heat and not let it boil. You can even just turn off the heat and put a lid on it. I love this dish. I probably make it once a week. I know there are a lot of ingredients that you may not have, but you don't need all of the ingredients to make a delicious soup. I just wanted to show you a meal that I would have this miso soup with. There's some rice, marinated cucumbers, grilled eggplant, that kombu salad that we made earlier, and one of my favorite dishes that I used to have as a kid. You can use the rest of the cold tofu that you didn't use for the soup, and I just put some bacon bits, some fresh tomato and green onion, and a dash of soy sauce on top. It's delicious.